taking three.
Going for the St. Louis now.
Oh no!
Son of a bitch.
You get your two?
Yeah. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course. And today I've got a battle in my Fuso. Yes, we can see it here. And why I'm showing this battle is I wanted to show off, or at least give another example of, switching or when to know whether you're playing defense or offense, right? Now, obviously, I don't play Battleships very often, so this was sort of not an exceptional game, but an exception to the rule, I suppose, for me anyway, in terms of Battleships, where I didn't just completely fail. Anyway, in the Fuso. Now, I ended up keeping the Fuso because I really enjoy this battleship. This and the Congo, and actually the Nagato, I enjoy all three. I kept all three. And I'm going to keep the Imagi as well, now that we're talking about it. But anyway, Fuso is a great ship, and I decide, based on where I spawn, that I am going to head towards the east. I figure this was a pretty safe place to go, considering that I sort of did already have the mindset of playing a defensive game here anyway. Figured that the enemies would mostly go towards the west, as would my allies, which is generally what happens on the map, and it would be fighting it out over there while I would be over here defending the east. So that's the plan. But, if you're coming into this sort of battle, and it doesn't matter what map it's on, right? It always boils down on the map to which side are you going to go, right? Are you going to go support north, south, west, or east, basically? So then you decide where you're going to go. What side are you going to do, or going to focus on, where are you going to support? Now, in this case, I happen to choose the east side. Even if it wasn't, two brothers, and I sort of already knew that the west would maybe be the primary focus. When you're coming into this sort of situation, like, I'm approaching the area where I want to start battling it out and support some team members, it's important to keep an eye on your minimap. Take a look at the minimap and see what your allies are doing. Now, I just sent out a salvo at a Cleveland off in the distance. Didn't really have high expectations for this salvo. Yeah. That was fantastic. Anyway, so yeah, getting back to the strategy, you're looking at the minimap, right, to see where the enemy is going, where are they focusing, and keeping an eye on the minimap is so crucial. I know it's some fairly basic stuff, but sometimes we forget, especially if we're getting fairly focused on our battle, right, or we're just sort of tunnel visioning on one side or one ship, right? So just try and remember to keep an eye on the minimap. So looking at the minimap, we can see, well, the enemy does have, at least right now, based on what we see, it looks like the enemy has some fairly significant forces here on the east side. So, okay, alright, that makes sense. Because I was going to play defense over here, so that sort of, goes into what I was counting on, or at least planning for. So that's good. And then on the west side, you can see that they haven't come across that many enemies. So obviously the west side is going to be the side that they are going to want to push, right? My allies are going to want to push through that west side to eventually come up behind the enemy and take that cap. So okay, that's fine. But it's important, to look at the minimap and actually be able to see and recognize this. I mean, if the situation was reversed, alright, if the enemies would have all went to the west, like I sort of assumed they would, it'd be completely different. My defensive idea and mindset over here would quickly have to change to the offensive, right? Because suddenly there aren't that many ships in front of me, and as long as, and assuming that I have pretty good and decent support, at least a few cruisers with me, hopefully a destroyer, it's our job now to push in and flank the enemy from the rear. That's just what we would have to do if the situation was reversed, and by looking at your mini-map, you're able to take a look and see these things unfold, and base your decisions on that, right? And you'll notice here too, my mini-map, our team on the west, on my allies on the west, someone over there, or hopefully most of them over there, are actually paying attention to what's going on, and they recognize that situation, right? There's barely any enemies on the west side. Let's quickly push in, take the west, and then move to the south. While the east over here, my ships and my support over here, while we sort of stall the enemy and do what we can in terms of damage. And luckily I have a great ship to do that, my Fuso. So, enemy ships off in the distance, playing the defensive game, I'm not really looking to push up too quickly. Generally speaking, when I'm in a battleship, I try to work my way up in terms of like closing closing the distance to the enemy. So if you know what a ribbon candy is, kind of how it wraps around, that's sort of the path I'll take, just sort of zigzagging almost around the firing line and getting closer every time, if the situation calls for it. I mean, there is eventually a point, that was another nice shot, there's eventually a point when you have to decide whether or not you're getting too close, or if you need to back off, and that's sort of where I'm at right now. I was going to get a little closer, but I mean, take a look at the enemies here, right? There are a lot of enemy ships over there, specifically some of these destroyers that I'm really concerned about. So it's not the time to be pushing these guys at all. No, leave it up to my allies on the west side, who are sort of grouping up right now and pushing to the south. And keep in mind too that just because you're in this defensive sort of situation that I'm in here doesn't mean that we had to take that point, the eastern point. No, that's not your objective here. When you're doing sort of defensive maneuvers like this, all you're doing is you're stalling the enemy until they get to your original cap point. In our case, it's the north, based on where we spawned. And we have all this room to work with. There isn't a sort of invisible line on the map where you have to sort of draw this line, say the enemy can't cross here. That ends up putting yourself into a situation where you may sort of be taking a lot more chances that you might not necessarily have to take in order to maintain this ambiguous line that you set for yourself, or that someone has set for the team, right? That's kind of dumb. You have all this space, right? Why not use it? The whole objective here is just to prevent the enemy from taking our point. You'll notice there is an enemy ship now in our point, right? Came up through the channel. So I've got allies around, though, that are going to be dealing with that guy, so I don't necessarily have to concern myself too much with it. It's just a matter now of trying to get that enemy who's capping our original point here in the north, try to get that guy gone as quick as possible so that we can continue to gain more points on the enemies, because we are ahead by one ship right now, and over here on the east anyway, there are a few enemies who are on really low health who just need to be finished off, right? Like the Thotgor in the background, I just couldn't manage to finish that guy off. There's the York here as well, he's burning away. So there are a few ships over here that aren't going to take very much damage at all to just finish off. Ah, that was such a close hit on the York. If only I could have finished him off. In comes torpedoes from the enemy destroyer, who came up through the channel. Yeah, they ran out of fuel long before they were going to hit me. Even if they didn't, I was in a great position to be able just to maneuver away from those guys. My team is now capping the enemy base in the south, so fantastic. You can see the defense over here on the east is going great. It doesn't happen all that often. I'm sure I'm sure you guys see it all the time, where these sort of defensive... that damn Thotgor. But anyway, these sort of defensive maneuvers don't always work, right? And I find generally when it doesn't work because one of two things. One is the teammates that you have don't recognize the situation and don't have enough support on the side that needs to play the defense. And the second reason I find that it doesn't work is, like we talked about before, drawing that invisible line on the battlefield. The enemy can't cross here, or just losing sight of your actual objective when you are playing a defensive battle like this is just teammates don't see that, and they don't recognize that, and they start making mistakes. They've drawn that invisible line, and it's like, oh, well, the enemy has already taken the point, this defense is, failed, I'm just not going to bother anymore. And then they start making stupid plays and get themselves killed. Now suddenly what support you had is dying off, or what little support you may have had is dying off as well. So it's just not a good situation, and it's important to, keep a sort of an open mind. I find that the biggest challenge is actually playing a defensive action like this, because 9 times out of 10 you're outnumbered, you've got to make some crazy calls, you're counting on doing massive amounts of damage in a short period of time, and you are more or less kiting the enemy around. You're stalling them, drawing them away from the actual push where things are actually happening and where the battle's going to be determined. But because you're playing such an effective defense, the enemy hopefully is going to get tunnel visioned, or at least the majority of the enemy ships will be tunnel visioned on you and your defense, that they are not actually going to see what's happening, and you're going to win. Like what's happening right now. We have 3 caps, right? They basically put everything, the enemies that is, put everything they had into the east. Weren't able to break through at all. And you can see they didn't even get close. Like, we still have a lot of room, finally. Anyway, we still have a lot of room to maneuver around and still let the enemy push up closer to our northern cap if we wanted to. And even at this point, too, where we have the 3 caps, if your defense is going, pretty hairy, and you're, at this point, you're more or less in the north of the map, or even on the west side of the map now, still trying to defend your cap, where you have the cap advantage at this point, you can feel free to fall back, let the enemy take the point, right? You need to keep yourself alive in order to actually defend, and that's really critical, and that's why I wanted to show this clip now that's ending here, is just, to talk a little bit more about the defense and, how to recognize the situation. Now, obviously, this would have been completely reversed and completely different had I gone to the other side and been on the offense, and completely different video at that time. But I didn't do too bad overall. I mean, second overall, I gained some money, decent amount of damage. I mean, nothing spectacular. The Fuso is definitely capable of a whole lot more damage, but I managed to pull off a bit there anyway. Looking around now at the next battle, or sorry, the next clip I have for the day. This is a clip submitted by Krostin. You may recall from several other clips that were submitted by him as well. So this is a great battle he has in his Shimakaze. So he sent this in and noted that it was the first battle, I believe, in his Shimakaze, and what a battle this was. I really, really can't wait to get my hands on one of these destroyers. So, looking at the destroyer itself, you'll notice 3 torpedo launchers, and in each torpedo launcher there is 5 torpedoes, yes. So a full spread from the Shimakaze is 15 torpedoes, and they have the maximum range of 20 kilometers once upgraded, so that's fantastic. And it's just an amazing destroyer, in my opinion anyway. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who don't like the Shimakaze because they say that it's, just spamming torpedoes, not a whole lot of skill involved, blah, 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 blah. I would disagree, but I'm really biased towards the Japanese. That's obvious. But I would still disagree. I mean, I think it takes a bit of skill to actually be able to use this type of destroyer effectively, for a number of reasons. Most notably, as soon as you're spotted, everyone's like, "Oh my God, it's Shimakaze, kill that guy." So you got to keep that in mind, right? As soon as you're spotted, people are going to want to kill you right away. And then there's a bit of skill involved in actually getting torpedo hits that far out on your intended targets. There is so much luck involved with that, though, and I also find that a lot of the time, we've talked about before in some of the Kagero videos, I'm shooting at one target way off in the distance, say like 17 kilometers away. My torpedoes never actually hit that ship that I'm shooting at, but what they do is they run into ships that I had no idea were there or wasn't aiming at in the first place, and still end up doing fairly well, so it's still pretty awesome. Anyway, first enemy ship pops up. So okay, getting in position here to start capping B. You'll notice that Krostin has a number of allied destroyers with him as well, and this is fairly critical. I mean, this battle, and in terms of matchmaking, it was all tier 10s basically. There were a few tier 8s, those poor tier 8s. There were a few of them. And the destroyers are really playing a big role here on Krostin's team. Because, I mean, they've got Shimakazes and gearing, so yeah, it's sort of not really a surprise, I guess. But anyway, more enemy ships popping up. So there's a Yamato that Krostin is aiming at, and Krostin launches all 15 torpedoes at the Yamato. Enemy torpedoes come in, and luckily Krostin sees them, was paying attention, cuts speed, turns into them, and avoids them. So fantastic job there. All torpedoes are launched now, right? On the Shimakaze here. So now it's just a matter of waiting for those torps to actually hit the target. Now, because this is Krostin's first battle in the Kagero, he doesn't actually have the upgraded torpedoes on the ship as of yet, so just a note on that. In terms of upgrades for the Shimakaze that Krostin has, module upgrades that he's purchased, the first one is the torpedo upgrade that he has. The second one that he put on there was interesting. It was actually an upgrade to the main batteries. Now, we'll just stop there, because, yeah, that was amazing. So there we go, talking again about not seeing ships that are actually in, not seeing ships that are out there, you're not even aiming at them, and you launch torpedoes and blam, you get some really nice hits and actually take him out. So that was an enemy destroyer that Krostin just took out, so fantastic there. Total luck though, right? Total luck. And then the torpedoes continued on, and he got 2 nice hits on the Yamato in the background. So, doing some excellent damage there as well. So fantastic. That's not too shabby. Now, enemy torpedoes are on their way in, but luckily Krostin and his ally Gearing here are able to avoid these torpedoes more or less, fairly easily. Krostin pops the old smoke and brings it down to basically a stop here, because this Mogami is fairly close in. You don't want the Mogami to suddenly be able to spot you, right? He can do a whole crap ton of damage, or rather that ship can do a whole crap ton of damage to you very, very shortly. And it will take you down. So a good move there, popping the smoke, coming to a stop, just letting the Mogami get out of here, right? Because the Mogami realizes too, it's not like Krostin's alone. Krostin has a number of battleships in the background, cruisers, and other destroyers here as well, right? So the Mogami knows that, he probably can't stay there and survive. So he's more or less trying, beating a hasty retreat, trying to get out of there. In the meantime, Krostin's still in the smoke, but more importantly, torpedoes have reloaded, so fantastic. We're going to pick up speed now and start lining up on another target. Ideally as well, you would want to shoot at battleships. It's the destroyer's main target, battleships, aircraft carriers, right? The big capital ships is what you want to kind of target for. Now, that being said, you do still want to take out bigger threats, I suppose. Like, for example, the Mogami is a fairly big threat right now. Luckily, the ally Shimakaze there, we can see him off to the port side. He's no scrub. He knew what was taking place, what was going on, and had torpedoes off for that Mogami in no time at all. So fantastic. But obviously, if that wouldn't have happened, you'd probably want to take off some shots at the Mogami, just like the ally Shimakaze did, because there's a fairly big threat there. So firing off another full spread, Krostin is at the Yamato in the background. Now the Yamato in the background isn't a turn, right? You'll also would have noticed the turrets. Now I was sitting here during the replay watching this and going, why wouldn't you aim for the turrets? Like, aim for the turrets, come on. But then, just watch. Just watch what happens. It's fairly amazing. But anyway, Yamato in the background taking shots off at the allied ships to Krostin that he has in the background, right? While all this is taking place, Krostin is just sort of strafing around, making a run now towards the south of the map. We still have the enemy turrets pushing up here, and there's the ally Shimakaze. Now, important to note too, right? Taking a shot at the turrets would have been fairly risky, especially considering the ally is there. Now, Krostin did take the shots, but also warned the ally, right? Really warned him, just watch out, there's going to be torpedoes, and that's always a great thing to do for your allies, just to make sure that they don't run into your torpedoes. You don't want to kill any of your allies. Torpedoes are on their way in, you can see the turrets just drove in a straight line. Yeah. That was fairly amazing. So 4 nice torpedo hits on the turrets there. Again, tier 8 driving a straight line. Now, maybe this was someone who had purchased the turrets recently. Krostin does play on the EU server, I believe, so I'm not sure if the turrets is actually still on sale over there. I have no idea. But whatever. He drove in a straight line and he paid the price for it. Moving into the southern half of the map now, you'll notice too, taking a look at the overall results, well, not overall results, but results as of now, Krostin's team is just kicking ass, right? Like they're still up 1 ship to the enemy's team, but more importantly is the points that Krostin's team is racking up right now. Really, really good. So moving into the south, taking a look at the enemy ships that are around down here, right? Sort of cruising around. You really don't want to get spotted. We talked about this before, and we'll still mention it, I'm sure, in countless videos upcoming. Just, you don't want to get spotted when you're in these Japanese destroyers. That's really, really critical. And if you do get spotted, probably more critical actually, now that I'm just talking about it, is if you do get spotted, is what you do once you get spotted. Yeah, it's something that I'm working on myself. You can see that Krostin more or less has it down pat, right? And good examples too. When you're spotted, if you have the option, you want to pop your smoke and you want to just come to a stop, more or less. Pudahead tells me this as well all the time. he says how much it pains him to see me, in those situations, pop my smoke but continue at full speed. And it's so true. He's so right. It's just, I know, you know, that's my own tunnel vision right there, right? I'm in the heat of the moment, I'm just freaking out, trying to get out, and I just don't consider actually stopping as being a viable solution. But that's me, something I'm working on. Anyway, important to keep these things in mind when you are at the helm of a Japanese destroyer, because the Japanese destroyers are really, at least I find, are really good. Now, again, bias, and to be fair, I have not played any other nation's destroyers past tier 7. The tier 7 that I had was a Mahan, and that was way back when in closed beta. Right now I only have tier 6 American Farragut, so, you know, correct me completely if I'm wrong. If you guys have more experience on the other destroyers, and, you know, I'm basically just talking out of my ass saying that the Japanese destroyers are awesome, let me know. And for what reasons, obviously. I want to know what reasons. But again, keep in mind I'm biased, and I'm still going to love my Japanese destroyers. Anyway. The torpedo spread that Krostin had launched off there at the enemy ship, you know, that completely missed, and it's because the enemy ship turned. Now, whether or not the enemy ship saw the torpedoes incoming, I have no idea, but unfortunate, especially considering the reload time on the Shimakaze. Now, that being said, I haven't got a Shimakaze, right, and I don't know how effective it is cycling your torpedo launchers, or if it's just best to put full spreads. From what I'm seeing, based on what Krostin's doing here, I'm liking the full spreads, frankly. I like having the option, you know, launching all 15 torpedoes out, and then just sort of driving off, reloading, capping bases, right, like we're doing right now. I like that. Anyway, lining up on this enemy Izumo over here. Torpedoes are reloaded, so we're going to launch a full spread off the Izumo. The enemies are making their presence known. I mean, they are up there capping the north point. They just took the middle point. So, okay, you know, things are getting a little real, a little more hectic, so we're going to have to get in and take at least one of these points back, right? Oh, correction. Allies are actually capping the north, so yeah, that's right. So there's no need at this point, you know, to take too many chances. It would be nice to take B, just say you were able to take all 3 points, but not required, right? Based on, again, looking at the points and where they are, right? Like, Krostin's team is really dominating here, and you've got about 400 points to play with, so at this point you can afford to take a few losses if need be, but it's a shame when it happens. It's nice when everyone survives, or at least when as many people as possible survive, right? More torpedoes coming out for the Izumo. We can see the Izumo there in the background, taking a look at the torpedoes as they are on their way in. But the Izumo, you know, he's in a turn, and then that's the benefit to firing, I think, to firing all 3 of these spreads at the same time, is that even if they turn and try to maneuver like this, your chances of getting at least one hit are still pretty high. Unfortunately, I mean, they all missed, but whatever. Doesn't matter. Enemy Yamato over here now. All right. But, you know, a little under 30 seconds on the reload for the torpedo, so that's fantastic. So this is a good time, right, to start setting yourself up for a nice torpedo run. Again, Krostin's team's going to win this, no problem, but let's see what we can do to this enemy Yamato. Now, the enemy Yamato is not at full health, but almost, right? I mean, there's so many hit points on that thing that if it's down by that much, maybe that's a quarter. I don't know. I think it's less than a quarter. It's still a whole bunch of hit points, so alright. There we go. Full spread of torpedoes off the Yamato. I like what he did there as well. I do it all the time as well in my Fubuki because it's a similar setup in terms of torpedoes here. You launch one spread halfway in front of the gray line indicator, one spread right on it, one spread halfway behind it. Take a look at this as well. This is what I was speaking to earlier with regards to Krostin understands, you know, what to do when you're spotted, and very critical in Japanese destroyer. He became spotted, popped a smoke, immediately stopped. And that's excellent because the secondary is on the Yamato. There's an enemy ship behind him as well, but specifically on the Yamato are just going to destroy destroyers. So torpedo hits start landing on the enemy Yamato. Nothing that guy can do. Look at that. That was awesome. That was really fantastic. So that was a lot of damage done there to the old Yamato. Now we have a Zhao off to our stern, but we'll notice that the points are really, 995 at this point, so Krostin really doesn't have a whole lot to worry about as long as he manages to dodge some of these shots and torpedoes, which he does. Battle over, victory. Fantastic. Look at these results. Like 455,000 credits. What's that? 13 torpedo hits. 9,900 experience. Fantastic. It was like 11 floods, 2 base assists, 7 defense. Top of the team overall with a little over 2,600 base XP. So that is not too shabby at all. And really just, destroying everyone. Looking at damage done. Now, we didn't see all the damage done in the battle from the counter, right? So going through the numbers, it was actually 160,000 damage done is what we're looking at there. So that is really fantastic as well in a Shimakaze. And then, credits earned, right? So what a bunch of credits earned, bunch of experience earned there as well. So that is pretty fantastic. Not too shabby at all. So that is today's video. Hope you guys did enjoy it. Especially the offense defense thing, and then just little more discussions here about Japanese destroyers. As always, leave any comments you have for me in the comment section below. Love reading those comments and responding back to them. Hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Thank you, Krostin, for sending in the replay. If you guys have any replays you want to send in, my email is in the comment section below. Send in your replay. And yeah, as always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.